Hey, hey, everybody! This is John Sanchez here. We're actually just getting an interview with Andrew Padilla. I'm actually going to let him introduce himself a little bit more. Really, what we're going to be talking about is some credit card processing and what you need to get that job done. So I'll go ahead and kick it over to Andrew and let him introduce himself, what he does, and then we'll get into it.
Hi. You can also call me Andres, like it says there. Um, so I've worked with credit cards and merchant services, point of sale systems, uh, within the hemp related industry and outside of it extensively. So um, I'm here as a referral source for hemp related and CBD and a lot of the experiences that businesses will go through in that industry. And so I'm happy to help out with um, any questions that you can have within merchant services for hemp related products.
Are you're like representing some lenders that do the credit card processing?
I've worked with them for a long time,
Okay.
and there's not a particular bank because that changes quite a bit. So, one of the most important things in this industry is to be on top of what bank regulations are changing, what banks could be meeting them and then get audited and aren't, and making sure that we have a resolution um, for the business side to keep going. Bank processing rules change, or their um, situation with that changes. So I don't have a tie to a particular bank that's making me recommend that, um, especially when they might not be the best solution.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, I mean, this is a huge problem, as you already know. Just with the credit card processing. I mean, what happened last year? With I'm not sure the lender that stopped working, but it through or the year before that, was it the year before that?
Yeah, well, both.
Both. Yeah, there's
uh,
a.
yeah.
But yeah, with that larger lenders, dropping out because of whatever fears involved. So,
Yes.
um, yeah. So, in your experiences, what are the some of the largest issues that people are seeing when going after credit card processing, as far as in the hemp sector?
The largest issues are the changing rules, the changing laws. The banks definitely don't keep up with federal or state laws on these. And federal laws are a lot more sticky than state laws. So they go closer to those, but even then, they might not give, nearly as much leeway as is meant to be set up. So they're being ultra old fashioned on a lot of these things. And so we're just staying on top of the banks that are becoming more progressive and more friendly towards it is really important.
Do you feel like we're moving into a time where this process is going to get easier, or is it just going to change?
It's it should be getting easier, but a lot of times when we think we have a really good solution, then they'll end up coming into some barriers that seem unnecessary or that set us back. So it's kind of you know a step forward and a step back a lot of times, and just keep trying to get banks that are working on moving forward. It's definitely going to be some breakthroughs in that, but there hasn't been um, really big banks. There have broken through, but I have a few that are some of the larger banks that are really working on it right now that I'm getting approvals with um, over the last few months, and they're they're not. I don't consider them long term until they've lasted for at least a year. because we've seen it before with places coming and going. But there's some pretty strong solutions right now. So hopefully they keep on top of their regulations and keep it getting better.
Right. Absolutely. I have known in the past that smokable products have been kind of an issue with credit card processors and their ability to work with certain businesses. Is that still something that we run into?
Yeah, definitely. There are some that are set up to process CBD, and then they can't do pre rolls. And there's another great solution right now that is having no problem with pre rolls and vapes. So it just depends on the bank. Um, I wouldn't accept that they're going to allow that, or just assume that they are, just because they're allowing CBD, and then start posting all of your vapes for sale, and then you end up getting your money frozen. So yeah, there's ones doing it and ones that aren't.
So, are there? I mean, this is kind of like one of those questions that we probably already know the answer to. But are there people in this industry who are signing up people onto processors and are doing it unscrupulously, where they shouldn't sell flower, but they don't inform them, or they sign them up as a totally different business?
Yeah, definitely. There's processors that I've seen out there in stores, and I know they're not approved, or they're not doing it correctly for CBD, but they have no problem, or the salesperson anyways has no problem telling the owner that it's fine. There's not going to be a problem. They have other CBD, or hemp related product sellers, and they're fine. And then I'll do a little bit of the footwork on it to call up the leadership of that company, and or the HR, and find out, and they'll turn out to be they're not supposed to be doing it. Of course, then I just leave it at that. But there's definitely a lot of salespeople that are working on a different level than what they're supposed to be.
Absolutely, I could see that, and I mean, that creates unsafe environments for the business owner. I mean, that's what it seems like it would do. It would make it to where their their money and the source of their revenue is coming into question, and that they, like you mentioned earlier, get money frozen in a way that could be for months. Because
Yeah.
and then I've heard of people, not like they've when that happens, any equipment that you have from them is none of that can be returned. It's all going to have to be paid for. So it's definitely creates a lot of issues when you don't do it as it should be.
Yeah, yeah. If they find out their equipment is being used for something that they haven't approved, then they can just freeze your account, and then you're left with the equipment. And hopefully you can return it and get your money back, or hopefully you can get unfrozen, but not always.
Right.
One thing I always worked with is banks that allow it, and everything is upfront. And maybe that bank, which has happened multiple times in the past, that bank will get audited, and they'll decide not to process anymore. They'll give a 30-day notice that they're going to stop processing. But there are exceptions where money's held up for longer than it should be, but generally it's not a problem with getting equipment returned, getting funds released, because the business was doing it appropriately. It's just that the bank has changed their policies, so they'll get all that cleared up. Whereas other situations, the bank, there's definitely foreign banks that are frozen, and then people don't get their money back. But in terms of the domestic ones, generally they'll change their policy. They'll pay out people. They'll say no processing it after this certain date, and then we'll, make sure that we have a new solution by that new date. If there has been times in the past when a new solution wasn't readily available, but there's a few that are out there now. So, and I can expect that to continue. If those few that are operating right now, um, and there's others that are working on operating. So if one of those that's operating now goes down or gets audited bad practices, I don't think it'll be um, a long wait to get switched to another that is doing it fine. Like that's one thing that's improved.
Okay, wonderful. That's really good to hear. It's good to hear improvements,
Yeah.
moving forward at least. So, um, okay, so we kind of is so. What are maybe a couple really important things that the business owners need to keep in mind when starting and going through the process of applying for the license, like maybe the kind of things that they should have, or the things that they should pay attention to when going through the card processing acquisition.
Yeah. Well, if the place is telling them, like we're talking about the sales rep saying that they're not going to have any trouble, we're doing CBD and yeah, it's legal, so we don't have any problem with it. It sounds like it should sound because, it's largely legal. Um, but that's not the way that banks really operate. They don't just say, "Oh, well, this law passed and everybody's doing this now, so it's fine." Um, Generally, if a person's telling you that, then they don't have the full information, or they're just trying to make you not think too much about it. You definitely want a place that is going to seem hard to get approved at. A place that wants your all the information on your products, rather than just saying, "Oh yeah, anything with CBD is fine," because it's not. And the places that treated it that way in the past are the banks that ended up getting shut down for those operations. So I want to make sure that it's a place that is, definitely seems to be being really careful about the products that are getting approved for sales.
Okay, so if they're walking into a situation with caution, then you almost can feel more comfortable with the process, because you know that they're making sure they're walking through all the steps.
Yeah, yeah, I would as an owner, and as being, coming from my side, I know sometimes it frustrates owners because they want it to be fast. They don't want to. They don't see why it should be treated um, any differently than say, other uncontrolled pharmacy products or things like that. But even those are generally really hard. Um, so, so yeah. The answer is you want to make sure that there's a lot of caution being taken, or else
Okay.
if you get a quick solution, then a lot of times you're going to get a quick a quick time in it, meaning like 1 to 2 months, then the account gets closed because they find out you're not selling things.
Right. So I mean, really, it's any number of things that could potentially be the issue. It comes down to going through cautiously, and you know, it like a big something that you kind of mentioned is it just doesn't seem like an easy process, and I don't think that if you're walking into it and it seems like an easy process. They're like, oh yeah, here, sign here, dot some i's, you're good. A few weeks later, you're up and running. It definitely it takes some time to establish this. We're establishing something so new in their eyes, I would imagine.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like selling T-shirts. So there's a lot of regulations in there. There's a lot of great benefits of CBD, of hemp, of THC, of other components. You got to have the COA that's really explaining what that is, what the composure is. Any good owner knows that you have to do that right now to be legitimate. And um, if your banker isn't looking at it the same way, then there's obviously a problem.
Right. I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, yeah, it's worth going through the extra effort, and that's where my team has always helped. And I have great owners that I work with that they know they want to do it right. They want to make sure that they have the right information about every product they're selling, and they don't want to put something up that's not approved yet and have any problems. So they'll call the team and they'll ask, and that's fine. That's great, actually, because then there's no problem with looking at it and saying, yeah, this one is fine, or this one isn't. You're kind of putting that up at your own risk if you do. And that's what the team is there for, to make sure that they're on top of the answers to those kind of questions.
Right on. Right on. This might seem kind of like a bit elementary, but I think maybe we should touch on it just to see. But what is underwriting? What are we talking about when we mention underwriting?
Just the bank rules, they're underwritten for approvals, so there are certain conditions that need to be met for each of those rules.
Right.
It's just reading those.
Yeah, things like product lists, like what you were mentioning, product lists, descriptions, COAs, stuff like that.
Yeah,
Okay. All right.
yeah,
Yeah.
because that's what places have gotten frozen before is, they just made a bland assumption about it being fine to sell a certain product, and like vapes, and then they started having problems with replaceable vape cartridges versus disposable, ones that could be altered, so that those are some of the things that have gotten more stringent. So the underwriters make sure that it's going to fit under the right particular category, not a broad category, to keep it safe.
Okay.
Now,
Cool.
of course, there's owners that don't want to deal with any of that, so they'll go with a processor that is giving them that big, broad overview, and they might be fine, and they might function for 6 months and make a ton of money off of those products being treated just very openly, and then they could all of a sudden get shut down, and there could be $10,000 of sales that get frozen at the same time as this discovery and freezing of the account comes about. So it's a matter if you want to take that risk or not.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. So, I mean, that matter if you, yeah, that seems like a very like this is something that you kind of got to step through one step at a time and very cautiously to make sure that all of the information is understood. Yeah, because we want it to last, and I think a lot of that people don't realize that when we're signing up for credit card processing, that's basically making an agreement between you and the bank, and the banks are putting themselves on the line in that process, right? Like, is that why they're so cautious in this process?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Very, it's the bank rules. It's made, comes from the top down, comes from New York or Rhode Island or, wherever this state, this bank started headquartered at. It doesn't come from some branch manager in Albuquerque, So we've definitely had Wells Fargo's that people have walked into, and the branch managers there told them, oh yeah, there's no problem. This stuff's all going legal right now. Don't worry, we'll open an account for you. That's not coming from the top down. That's coming from them. And if that doesn't seem right to you, which it shouldn't, then you're taking a big risk by putting your money there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Whereas, we work in the industry and make sure to have the right contacts. So I have banks that are currently really, really taking great hemp-related accounts. That everything's crystal clear. It's written out there. They know what it is. It's coming on corporate paperwork. It's not just a bland opening an account statement. It's saying, you're a business related to this industry. We need to see the correct license. You show the correct license. You show that you're a legal seller of it, and they're going to have a legal account for you. If they treat you just like you're a t-shirt shop, then they're just trying to pull a fast one, and you shouldn't want to be any part of that.
Yeah, because that's where your money's going. um, do do the banks look at a brick and mortar establishment differently than a online establishment?
Definitely, yeah.
Um,
We can refer out for e-commerce, and it's different than being brick and mortar in terms of what they're.
okay.
There's better approvals in e-commerce right now. So, you know, the team will refer out to the kind of underwriting that needs to be met for the exact store, whether it's e-commerce or retail.
Okay. So
Yeah.
are you saying there's more favorable options for e-commerce? Is that what you mentioned?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right now.
All
Because
right.
e-commerce is easier to regulate. You know,
It's easier to what? I'm sorry. It kind of
it's
broke up
easier
there.
to regulate.
Okay.
All the composure of the goods are listed, they're shown, and what's for sale is shown. So you can put your 10 products up there for sale. They've all been audited. They're all visible there. There's very less room for cheating the system. For what they're looking out for is you know selling pre-rolls that, for example, that don't have what they say they have in them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's much more likely to happen on the retail level than on the e-commerce level. So we can get better approvals on e-commerce. And that doesn't mean you can't sell through your local store on your online site. It's just that it's meant for being broader than that e-commerce.
Yeah.
You know, to give you much broader reach for customers.
Interesting. Um, now, all right. I was just kind of trying to think of some other questions. One of
Well,
them was, huh? Go ahead.
yeah, yeah. So you know, I'm a great advisor for this now for anyone for these kinds of questions. I'm not working at a bank. I'm not working in the industry, uh, but you can go through the website to get referred out to the people that are working in the industry, um, and the people that are working with the website to get you the right requirements for getting an approval, and show you, okay, these are the few domestic banks that are doing this right now. This is what you need to send in to get an approval here. This is what you need to send in to get approval for retail. This is the equipment that's available. Or this is the gateway that you're going to use that you can plug in to wherever you might be selling online. So you go through the website, submit there. The people working with that will then take it up from there and be able to provide you with information on the best way to move forward with getting approval.
Cool. So you're saying that the link that you had sent me, that link that you had sent me, is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, I'll get that posted up on this video and for the on the YouTube, and put that as much as we can. We want to make that resource available to everyone because there's so many issues. I mean, on a daily basis, I see people having issues with credit card processing, where to go, how to get started. So having a resource like that is really useful, and I definitely encourage everyone to utilize that resource that is available to you, so that you can get involved with this in a safer manner, and one that's going to have more staying power. Cool, man. Well,
Yeah.
So, are you gonna be at any events coming up? Do you maybe plan on being in Dallas over in January or something like that?
No, no, I'm not going to. Um,
No
yeah,
problem.
I work with financing in for business customers. That's primarily what I'm doing, but just with a lot of background in this space, I want to have the resource out there for people to go to for getting connected with the right banks that can do it,
All right, cool. Well, thank
and
you for
leave the
providing that.
information up.
Right on. Yeah. And if more comes up, definitely more than welcome to reach out and we can have a sit down and have some conversation about some things that come up that might be pertinent to what others are using. So
Yeah,
definitely. Definitely.
yeah.
Cool.
There's great people to refer to that I have worked with that are, right in the thick of it with all the banks, um, working with everything from CBD, hemp, THC related products and businesses to controlled pharma, non-controlled pharma, foreign sales, companies, that might be registered in the U.S. but actually they're operating in Canada or South America or some other place, um, and helping to provide them solutions too. This network does that. So those are good questions to come in through that website, for any of those kind of products, and see how they can help you get placed for having a really good setup. Um, there's definitely there's definitely e-commerce sites that are operating all throughout the world, getting really good revenues coming in, generating from from countries, internationally. Uh, that's what the group tries to help with getting
Okay.
the right merchant service set up for.
Interesting. Interesting. Oh, one thing I did kind of want to ask, just because it's a concern that many have had in the past, is a foreign bank versus a domestic bank when it comes to credit card processing. Is there a benefit to using why would a bank want to use a foreign, or why would a company want to use a foreign bank versus a domestic bank?
Well, generally, if your banking is elsewhere,
Okay.
like I have businesses that came to me before that were operating out of Canada or Mexico or South America. And generally, if they're operating there, then their banking is there. So they don't necessarily want to go through a US processor. It's then going to have an international exchange to put their funds not in dollars into their account, to put their funds in pesos into their account, or any other currency, and then have a big exchange issue. So they might want to use an international bank. Whereas generally people operating only within the U.S. Um, and going by the U.S. regulations are going to want to use one here to not have the opposite kind of exchange problems.
Okay. All right, that makes a lot of sense. Does that so basically when it even with the credit card processing, it would come down to complexity of the rules or complexity of the laws involved, and why a bank would want to stay foreign and interact with us or versus a domestic.
Yeah, yeah. Like like a processor or a company in Canada, wants a processor that's either. I mean, there are some that are compliant that are operating in the U.S. and Canada, but they have harder rules than one that's just operating in just Canada because they're a lot more open there. So it's going to be more, unless they want to do banking at Bank of America and have everything in that system. So yeah, it comes down to those, but it's just important that there's options outside of U.S. banking.
Okay, all right.
Just but that's one thing to talk about with the referral group is your level of comfort, the
Right.
owner's level of comfort with that. Um, and some are comfortable, and some have tons of experience working with certain banks in South America that are, work functioning as the top bank in that economy, and go by a lot of rules. Like for example, in Chile, the banking rules there much harder than the banking rules in the U.S.
Huh.
Because they're just a lot more careful. But and then in Mexico, right, there's a lot less credit cards than there is in the US. There's everybody here has credit cards, and over there they don't. It's not really part of the it's become more part of the culture with Walmart releasing their own credit cards and stuff like that. But before that, it wasn't a really big part of the culture like it is here. Um, so so yeah, there's just depending on the comfort and the difference in the regulations, and how easy it is that people are running around with credit like they are here in the US.
Okay. All right. So I mean, it's less of a scary thing that everyone has to get involved in, and more of what you're comfortable with operating with at this time. Is there opportunities on both sides of it? The domestic and foreign when it comes to credit card processing and banking.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. That's good to hear. There's
Yeah.
definitely been some years where it wasn't like that. So that's very good to hear.
Yeah, there's really a lot of nuances to the different banking rules in different countries. And some are good to go with, and some aren't. You can't just go with the British bank, for example, because you figure they go by Western, by the same rules as here, because they don't. And there can be a lot of fraud in some systems, or there can be ones that are very, very careful, and they're harder to get approvals in, but they're really safe. So
Okay, great. There's some nuances, but maybe there's a lot less a fog in the way of those nuances.
yeah.
Cool. Well, right on. Well, that's all I got.
Okay.
I don't know if you had anything left that you would like to say. The floor is yours. If not, I definitely will get this posted up, and you know, hopefully there's going to find some people that need your guys' services.
Yeah, that'll go through there for those referrals.
Yep.
You know, and they'd be happy to help.
Great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time and giving us some good insight and clearing up some of the fog that is in the way of this credit card processing. Thank you so much, Andres.
Yeah, for sure. You're welcome.
Cool. Well, yeah. Have a beautiful day, man. Have a beautiful day. I will.
Okay.
You guys have a good one too, everyone. This is John at Enchanted Consulting, and was just having some information, a little bit of a conversation on this beautiful Sunday. I hope everybody has a great Christmas coming up. I hope you do as well, Andres, and have a beautiful afternoon.
Thank you. You too. Have a great Sunday.
You as well.